What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube. And today I've got another edition of The Drive-In, where I watch recently released films and tell you guys whether they're worth watching, worth waiting for, or worth skipping altogether. Today I've got the most anticipated horror review of 2022, and probably the most divisive film of this year or the last several years. I'm going to get right into it. We're talking about Halloween Ends, 2022's farewell to the David Gordon Green chapter of the Michael Myers saga. In 2018, he started this with the Halloween 2018 reboot and turned his version of the franchise into basically number 2, 3, and 4, the sequels to the original Halloween movie, which follow Laurie Strode and company 40 years after Michael's first attacks, into the next 3 movies over the last 4 years. From 2018 to 2022, we've got the final chapter here, Halloween Ends. If you guys want to see my full reviews on Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills from last year, they both are on this channel. Go back and check those out. I may put those in the links below, but if not, just put those into the YouTube browser under this name. You'll see those. But I want to get into this one because I saw it with my friend Kristen in the theaters. I have Peacock, but I decided I wanted to go support them in the theaters and watch it live. And I had a good time watching it with my friend, but I have a lot of things to say, so I'm going to just jump right in. I'm going to keep this spoiler-free. Being spoiler-free, oftentimes, especially in a movie like this, really hampers the review because there's not so much I can say. I have to be very vague about the way I talk about things so as not to directly spoil any plot points or anything. So I'm going to try and talk around this stuff, so I apologize if my points are not as salient or don't make as much sense as they usually do because I'm trying to not spoil anything. But the movie is still fairly new, and it is currently in theaters and on Peacock if you want to watch it, so I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but I will try to talk at length about the things I liked and disliked about this movie. It runs an hour and 51 minutes, and while that usually runs a little bit steep for me, I feel like that's about a decent runtime. They could have shaved 20 minutes off this, but I think an hour and 51 runs just fine for this. The pacing is definitely a bit lopsided. You get some pacing, kind of things start a little slow and then go heavy on the back half, so they could have fixed the pacing a bit, but an hour and 51 is not a bad runtime for this. This movie is written by Paul Brad Logan, who I think is his first time writing on this series, directed by David Gordon Green, who directed the last 2, and starring Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, Andy Matichak as Ellison, Rowan Campbell as Corey Cunningham, and James Jude Courtney as The Shape. Now, this movie, essentially, you've seen the trailers, you've seen the posters, you know what this series is. I don't got to tell you much about this. This film picks up 4 years after the events of the last film, following Laurie Strode and her remaining family in the wake of the Michael Myers tragedy and return, trying to live and cope in Haddonfield with the death and resurrection of Michael Myers. So let's get right into it. Number 1, I'm starting with the positives like I always do. Number 1, I'm starting at the end, beginning at the end here, final fight / conclusion. When you do get the footage you see in the trailer, when you do get Jamie against Michael, because they've marketed this whole thing as being the final showdown, the final Laurie Strode movie, the final Michael Myers part of this conclusion. This is supposed to end, right? So you get the stuff between Laurie and Michael, and it is brief. It is, in my opinion, too brief. The pacing is slow in the first half. It picks up quickly, but it is short. But the stuff you get is really, really good. I think for a movie called Halloween Ends, it is meant to be the conclusion of this series forever, which we know it's not going to be. At some point in our lifetimes, we're going to get another one of these. Someone's going to remake the series again because they're going to see cash on the table, and they're going to know this IP makes money. But for a movie called Halloween Ends that is the definitive end to this trilogy, I think it was a fitting conclusion. I think the fight scene, albeit brief and weirdly paced, was a good fight scene between Laurie and Michael. They both were kept strong at the end of this situation. The fight was intense and fun, and the sound design for it was good and accurate. And the conclusion, I think, is going to leave people that want to see a definitive winner and a definitive conclusion. You will get that in this movie. So if you like things to be easily defined and you like the ending to be a clear-cut, kind of satisfying ending that gives the audience a reason to feel like this is it, this movie does that well. So, again, pacing and length are not the best for this, but when you get to the final fight and the conclusion, I think the audience that's been watching this stuff for 40 years will be satisfied. Nostalgia is a big positive here. You get a lot of nice callbacks. You get some Jamie Lee Curtis narration, which is really good. You get a lot of flashbacks to the original Halloween and the other parts of this trilogy, which are really, really good. You get a lot of shots that call back to the original. You get some poses that call back to the original. You get some framing that reminds us of the original. There is some good fan service in this Halloween. Not quite as much as Halloween Kills. The references here are a little more slight and a little more obscure than the in-your-face ones they used in the first movie, or the last movie, I should say. But this one is really good, too. The nostalgia is here. If you like the original Halloween, there are certain moments and callbacks they put into this that are going to make you smile a little bit, and those are always close to my heart. Laurie plus Frank, I have here. We get a little more of the Laurie Strode kind of love story, a little bit of a side story with Laurie and Frank here. Will Patton playing the sheriff from the first movie. We see a little bit of their kind of chemistry and connection. When they're on screen, they make you happy. Their little romance is a nice little escape from the stuff that's going on. Their dialogue's written well. Their chemistry is obvious. Their timing is good. I like those two together a lot. Character study positives. The character study is hit or miss in this because there's when they use it a lot in this movie, and I think they use it way too much. But when you look at the characters, Corey Cunningham, we spend a lot of time with him, and we'll talk about him at length here. But Corey Cunningham, for better or for worse, his character is very fleshed out. We spend a lot of time with him, and it's not always the best paced, and it doesn't always make complete sense to me or to hardcore fans of the series, but they do spend a lot of time delving into his character. And I think if this was a standalone film, maybe a film called Season of the Witch, or something else that's not called Halloween, I would be in love with the character study and the character of Corey Cunningham. If this was not a Halloween film and it was just about him, I think this would be great. They do a good job with that character. I just wish they hadn't taken this time to do it. Jamie Lee Curtis, I think, is great in this. There's times in the series, including in the last movie, where she's a bit ham-fisted and she's kind of there just to be a little dramatic. And they brought her back in this movie. She's not in Halloween Kills nearly enough, but she is in Halloween Ends as the focal point, and that is wonderful. She's in this movie a lot like she should be. Her dialogue has been dialed back. She's dramatic at the right times. Her writing side plot and the stuff where she's doing voiceover stuff is really good. It puts a nice wrapper and a frame around this movie, and that character study part of her and of the town, when they use it, is done very well. Jamie Lee Curtis is a wonderful actress. She shines so much in this, and the moments when the town turns on her and blames her for Michael Myers, for her bringing Michael basically into town and back into town and causing the town trauma, is a really nice touch to show you the negative sides of what she has to deal with on top of being stalked by a killer. The real-life implications of her town and what Michael's done to it and what Michael has done to them, causing her grief, is a really nice psychological look at extra horror aside from the slasher aspects of Halloween. Very well done. Now we're on to the negatives, because there are many. In my opinion, number one, and again, I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as I can. Most of this is stuff you guys have already heard online or read online or seen in trailers or seen from other reviewers. But number one, where's Michael? Michael Myers is frickin' Waldo in this movie. You can't find this guy with a road atlas. What in the hell did they do with Michael Myers in this movie? If you're tuning in to see what you saw in the trailer, which is intense Michael Myers running around killing people, and you're tuning in to watch a Halloween movie where you get to the Michael and Jamie stalking each other and getting to the final showdown, aside from those brief moments in the trailer that you do get at the end that are satisfying, you don't get much of that in this movie. This is not a Michael Myers movie. I would go as far as to say it's not a Halloween movie. This movie is a Corey Cunningham movie. This is a Rohan Campbell movie. And Rohan Campbell as Corey Cunningham is a really good actor, and he does really nice moments. But we are with him the entire time. This movie is Jamie Lee Curtis kind of as number two, with Corey Cunningham as number one. And again, for a standalone movie, that would be phenomenal. For a Michael Myers movie, there's not much Michael Myers. We don't see Michael Myers until about, 45 minutes in the movie? And then he's only in maybe a fifth of the movie. He's really not even really involved anymore until the last act of the movie. So if you're tuning into this as a 40-year fan and you've watched all the Halloween movies and you want to see Michael and Jamie one last time, this is supposed to be the big showdown. This is the end. Where is our antagonist? In the last movie, Jamie Lee Curtis couldn't be found. She spent the entire movie in the hospital. In this movie, she's back. Michael Myers is barely there. Next negative, protection of Michael Myers. I always talk about protecting your antagonist on this channel. showing them sparingly, using them to scare people, not overexposing, not making them look silly, not making them look bad. Michael Myers is a legacy character that's now been in, 14 of these movies? 3 different versions? 4 or 5 timelines? Protect your characters. Michael wasn't protected at all. Not only was he barely shown when he was not shown to be the Michael Myers we know and love. I won't get into specifics. I won't spoil anything directly. But Michael Myers was not protected in this film. You almost feel bad for Michael Myers. And not in a good character study way. In a way that you're going, what are you guys doing to him? You're pissing on his legacy. I don't understand what they did here. They almost tried to make it like real world, like too realistic, like what would happen to somebody if they'd gotten older. But this is Michael Myers. This is the shape. This is the force of evil. This is the guy Dr. Loomis said wasn't a man and would never be stopped. He seemed like he was stopped a lot in this movie. And that makes me very sad. For somebody who came in for this showdown, you don't get enough of your killer, and when you do, he doesn't feel like the killer you know and love. But then at certain points, he does. In little small doses, in that last third, he feels like the Michael Myers of old, which then throws the previous logic out the window and makes it all feel for naught. So this feels to me almost like they threw this. Well, we'll get into the next note. But yes, protection of Michael was bad. My next negative, Romeo and Juliet. The Montagues and the Capulets, right? That is what this story feels like. Again, this story is not Laurie against Michael. The last story was Michael against the town with Laurie in the hospital, and this story is Laurie doing other stuff, dealing with the town and other people and other antagonists, while Michael sits away hidden for half the time. And when you see him, you feel bad and want to give the guy a fucking cookie. That's the way they handle this. Romeo and Juliet. This feels like a love story between Roanne Campbell playing Corey Cunningham and Andy Matichak playing Allison. They're both great. Allison's been good for the entire series. They made a burgeoning star out of her. And Corey Cunningham, played by Roanne Campbell, does a great job in this movie. But their love story is at the center of this. This feels like somebody wrote a romance story with some like tension and psychological character development in it, and realized, oh, we can't sell this. Let's make this a Halloween movie. So I feel like they just kind of, how they used to do with the Hellraiser movies, they would make a sci-fi film and they would just throw Hellraiser in like 5 minutes of it to call it a Hellraiser, so they could make money off the IP and keep the rights to the movies and the company. That's what it feels like with the Hellraisers, which they've told us before they've done that, and they did it before with Jason X as well. And I think they've done it here. It feels like this is supposed to be the final part of a trilogy, in which brings the entire franchise, including the original, in as one thing to finish it. It doesn't feel like that. This is a love story that devolves around a pretty fairly rushed, and sometimes illogical romance between Allison and Corey, and Michael's just kind of a subplot that's kind of a used tool to enhance other characters and not himself and not the main protagonist. So there's times when you're looking going, okay, this romance doesn't always make sense. There's times where it does and there's times where it's rushed. But again, as a standalone movie, I think this would play well. But again, much like Season of the Witch, when you put Halloween in the title, or much like Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning, when you put Friday the 13th in the title, people expect it to be that kind of movie. Not a love story, but with your hidden killer being thrown at the last minute. So I don't like that in and of itself. The kills. For a Halloween franchise, the kills feel kind of like a subplot. The kills really aren't important in this movie. There's some that are decent. There's some that are solid. They're not bad. But I feel like this is, especially coming off of what I think are 2 of the more brutal entries in the franchise. Halloween 2018 took it to another level. After the gory Rob Zombie stuff, they were done more tastefully and protected, but also still good. In Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills was one of the goriest ever. Right up there with the Rob Zombie ones. It was really gory and brutal, and it kind of made Michael feel protected and brutal. Again, this didn't make Michael or anybody else feel that brutal. They cut away a lot. There was a couple things they showed, but sometimes when somebody died, it was very quick, or there wasn't much build-up, so they either killed them quickly, or they didn't kill them with any tension, so it was kind of just thrown away. So for a horror film, that's the last one, you expect it to be this big bang that it goes out with, this big resonant kind of strike with these kills, and it wasn't that big in this movie. Same with score. Score is another one. I love the score in 2018. I love the score in Kills. Carpenter himself was really heavily involved, and I thought the score was well placed. There was a nice mix in this franchise so far, this new franchise, with the original score mixed in with some new tense stuff, mixed in with some remixes, and this one didn't feel like that. This one felt like the weakest score to me. The scores were brief. We didn't hear a lot of score at certain times. There's times that I thought a score could have helped what was going on in the background. When we did hear it, it's very brief, and we didn't really hear any of the nostalgic stuff we came to love. Again, I'm considering this on a higher level because this is Halloween Ends. This is supposed to be the ending of this new spin-off, along with a tie-in to the first movie, and it didn't feel, the kills or the score didn't feel like it belonged here. Finally, final negative. Societal statements. I praised the last movie for trying to do something different. I praised the last movie for giving statements on society about the study of fear and what trauma does to a town, and how grief and trauma and death can affect other people, and how other people's psychology can band them together in a positive and a negative way to make themselves kind of try to overcome the tragedy and travesty that has affected their town in the past. They did that again in this movie. They took some big risks with it, and they basically made this trilogy, again, no longer about Jamie or Michael, but about the town's reaction to Jamie and Michael, to Laurie and Michael, Jamie Lee Curtis. You know what I'm saying? And to me, it was heavy-handed. I think I get what they're trying to do. I get the tie-ins. I feel like every movie now is trying to do this. Like it happened with Candyman. It happened a lot with Halloween Kills. It's happening here. Too many movies now are trying to make everything so broad and so elevated and so societal. And I love when certain people do it. Mike Flanagan does it greatly. Jordan Peele does it greatly. And there's times that it's done greatly here. But I feel like not everything has to be about society. Again, the whole marketing campaign, the poster, the trailer, everything for this, Halloween Ends, is built around the final showdown, showing us 78 to now between Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Myers. And it doesn't need to be about the town. It doesn't have to all be about how they're affected by it. You know, I like the moments when the town, when the old characters from the original recognize Michael. I like the moments when the town yells at Jamie Lee Curtis's character for kind of, in partly causing this. But the town is the entire focal point of this movie. They caused some things with Andy Matichak. They caused some things with Rohan Campbell, Corey Cunningham. They're just very involved in every aspect of this. And I wanted this to more be about the psychology of Michael and Jamie and their kind of love-hate relationship and their time periods and Laurie Strode's mentality of this. And we get some of that early on, which is nice, and we get a good bit of that toward the end, which again, the last fifth of this movie, the last 20 minutes, is really, really wonderful in that. But the rest of the time, it's about everyone else but the main characters. We're here for the main characters. We're here for the showdown. We're here for who's going to survive and what is going to be left of them, to steal a tagline from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're not here for everybody else. We're not here for these first-time characters like Corey Cunningham, who we just met an hour ago. We're here for the characters we've been growing up on since 1978, and they don't give us that here. Not everything has to be this elevated horror society statement stuff. This is Halloween. This was a slasher that John Carpenter, the creator himself, said had no motive. This is Michael Myers, the shape, the embodiment of evil, randomly for no reason with no motive going after babysitters in a small town because he got out. Because that's his hometown. They were home and he came home to kill. That's as simple as it is. And I understand as franchises go on, they got to find new ideas. And I understand you've made those films before and you want to make something fresh. But this is not the time to take those kind of chances in the final movie of a 40-year franchise with different iterations. I know we're going to get more, but for the end of this trilogy and the way this was built, it was falsely advertised, and it wasn't delivered for the most part into how we expected it to be. So that is my spoiler-free review. That is the end for me of this. And the way I quantify this movie after first viewing, and again, I might soften and change on it. I might have some different opinions with another watch. But as of right now, I've got this as my third worst in the franchise because of the lack of Michael, because of the lack of protection, because of the fact there was no Jamie Lee Curtis in the last one, no Michael in this one, because of the fact that it centers around brand new characters in the town, and it doesn't to give us what we were advertised to get. I'm putting this as the third worst in the entire franchise, behind Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 and Halloween Resurrection. This is my third worst of the franchise. I'm going 4 out of 10 because they did take chances, they did develop characters, they did do some nice spin-off stuff. I just wish it wasn't done as the last movie in a long-standing franchise. If this stood by itself, it'd be a lot higher because the new stuff they tried was great, but not for Halloween Ends. So to me, 4 out of 10, third worst in the franchise. That's where I stand. If you want a spoiler review, tell me in the comments below so I can get more specific about what I saw. If you guys saw it, I know you've seen it. It's the most divisive movie in the world right now. I've been seeing it for a week and a half. Tell me in the comments below. Do you agree with these points? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? What are your points? Why did you love or hate it? Tell me in the comments below. If you have not seen it, it's currently in theaters. Go support it in theaters. If you can't go support it in theaters, go watch it on Peacock. And I'm sure I'll see you again at some point. But for right now, Michael Myers and company, Jamie Lee Curtis, Halloween franchise, all of you guys, rest in peace. Thanks for the memories. I hope I'll see you again. Take care.